Ukrainian military destroys 2 Russian ammo depot and Wagner Group on HIMARS strike in Oblasts. Ukraine has aggressively unleashed attacks in Zaporizhia this week. Zaporizhia, a Ukrainian district that Russia illegally annexed in September, is currently partially occupied by Russian forces. 1 week ago, the Kremlin announced Russia wouldn't seize any more territory from Ukraine, rather focusing on a return of its original goals of the demilitarization and denazification of Ukraine while maintaining the 4 territories it illegally annexed in September. Zaporizhia is in southeastern Ukraine and is home to Europe's largest nuclear power plant. Ukraine has unfolded its efforts in those areas and successfully liberated Kherson in November, although Russia continues to claim the district remains under Kremlin annexation. Lately, Ukrainian forces have focused their counteroffensive efforts in Zaporizhia. On Monday, Ukraine destroyed a key bridge Russian forces used to shuttle supplies across the Wagner River. Shortly after, on Wednesday, Ukraine struck again, this time targeting 2 Russian ammunition depots and destroying those as well. The enemy continues to suffer losses, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine posted on Facebook on Thursday. According to the post, Ukrainian forces targeted the Tokmak, Palahi, and Berdyansk settlements in Zaporizhia. The defense forces destroyed 2 enemy ammunition depots, 2 artillery systems with ammunition, as well as 6 units of military equipment of various types. More than 200 enemy servicemen were wounded, the post said. The post also said Ukrainian forces elicited 11 HIMARS attacks on Russian troops, targeting service members, weapons, and military equipment. 2 strikes were unleashed on Russia's missile systems. Mark Kanchin, a senior advisor with the Center for Strategic and International Studies, told media that Ukraine will likely launch a winter offensive against Russia once the ground freezes, likely in January. Although it's impossible to know for certain where Ukraine will target its attacks, Kanchin said Russian forces in Zaporizhia may have potential weaknesses that make the region an ideal place for Ukraine to launch a counteroffensive. There's a long, thinly held front and there hasn't been a lot of activity up until now, Kanchin said of the Russian forces occupying Zaporizhia. That would be a logical place to attack. Kanchin said Ukraine also could be using the recent Zaporizhia attacks as a way to deceive Russia before striking stronger elsewhere. Earlier this week, Ukraine claimed the attack on the critical bridge, which crosses the Wagner River and connects the city of Melitopol and the village of Kostiantynivka in Zaporizhia. Media previously reported that Russian news outlet RIA Novosti said the bridge was damaged but survived the attack. RIA Novosti reported explosives were placed on the bridge's support system, and although it didn't fall, traffic was suspended. Media could not independently verify the outlet's statement about the bridge's condition. Experts previously told media that the bridge damage could cut Russians off from necessary supplies, such as food, adequate uniforms, and weapons. Both Russia and Ukraine have attempted to use the cold winter weather as an ally by targeting their opponent in a way that could degrade soldier morale. The attack prevents Russian soldiers from receiving necessary supplies to continue fighting during the winter months. Russia also has targeted Ukraine in similar ways, launching attacks on the nation's critical infrastructure and shuttering the nation in darkness as its key energy sources were damaged or destroyed. Regardless, Ukraine is pleading with the West for additional weaponry for what it sees as a decisive next phase of the war against Russia. However, the request comes as members of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, are struggling to refill their own arsenals. In a Thursday address to the European Council, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky asked members of the European Union for more modern weapons, a larger volume of supplies. He said defensive support would be instrumental in the next 6 months, a critical period he anticipates will demand greater efforts than the past 9.5 months. The next 6 months will be decisive in many respects in the confrontation that Russia started with this aggression, Zelensky said. Aggression against Ukraine and against each of you, because the final target of Russia is much further than our border and Ukrainian sovereignty. NATO countries, which include the US, have provided some $40 billion in weaponry to Ukraine, according to a November report from the New York Times. The US alone has provided weaponry worth more than $15 billion, including the long-range HIMARS system and Javelin anti-tank missiles. Poland is delivering almost a quarter of Ukraine's supplies from abroad. NATO doesn't really plan to fight wars like this, and by that I mean wars with a super intensive use of artillery systems and lots of tank and gun rounds, Frederick Kagan, a senior fellow with the American Enterprise Institute, told Foreign Policy last month. We were never stocked for this kind of war to begin with.